All right, so I got a little bit of an update here for you guys on the ongoing standoff between Joe Biden and Kevin McCarthy on the idea of whether or not we should lift the debt ceiling in order to basically not default on the debt that we do have. I mean, keep in mind the debt ceiling is sort of just like a completely arbitrary metric that we lift every couple of years. It's money that we've already spent. We're just talking about paying our bills. And so Republicans have basically been trying to hijack this situation in order to try to extract some sort of austerity measures that could be imposed on working class people. So we'll get to a little bit of that here in a second, but they recently had a meeting, I think it was yesterday, with Joe Biden and Kevin and a couple other Democrats and Republicans, and according to CNN here, they say intractable positions and no new ground. It looks like they made basically no progress whatsoever on these talks. And I mean, keep in mind, we're heading towards this June 1st projected deadline, according to Janet Yellen at least. And if we don't figure some shit out before that deadline, we are talking about absolutely massive implications, not just for the US economy, but the entire global economy. I mean, and keep in mind, we're also already likely heading for a recession, okay, as the Federal Reserve continues to jack up those interest rates with the explicit and openly stated intent to throw millions of Americans out of the job market, okay? And we're heading towards that economic reality. And then on top of that, we also have this as a looming potential. So a little bit of details here. They say, in a lengthy meeting at the White House on Tuesday, leaders struggled to break any new ground on debt ceiling negotiations, with a source familiar telling CNN that leaders repeated over and over again the same positions privately that have been a common refrain in public. Literally, no new ground was breached, the source told CNN. They say it's a reflection of the entrenched positions that have paralyzed negotiations for nearly 100 days now, and a dangerous sign for what could be ahead. After making no progress, which House Speaker Kevin McCarthy and others acknowledged publicly on Tuesday night, the speaker ended his meeting with the president on Tuesday afternoon by asking him how did he want to proceed. So they say the implication was the room to keep talking. President Biden told McCarthy that the staff should meet over the subsequent days, followed by another meeting on Friday. So it looks like they're going to give another crack at it, but doesn't look like they've been making any progress whatsoever. So a little bit more information in terms of like what exactly are Republicans looking for. It seems like Joe Biden is standing firm in his decision to just call for a clean debt bill. I mean, keep in mind, under Donald Trump, they blew up the debt ceiling to do what? I mean, give a massive tax cut where the vast disproportionate benefits went to the wealthiest Americans, the wealthiest billionaires and corporations. So it's not as if they're like not willing to lift the debt ceiling or blow up the deficit and blow up the debt. It's just that they want to do that to help their wealthy buddies, to help their donors, their campaign contributors, okay? That's what they want to do in order to jack up the national debt, or also spend it on things like the Pentagon budget, for example, which, oh, by the way, just recently failed its fifth audit in a row, okay? A complete financial black hole for our government, and yet they never talk about fiscal responsibility when it comes to that. They only seem to bring it up when it's spending on things like social programs or tackling climate change. So a little bit more details here on what a potential deal could look like. They say a source familiar with these discussions told CNN that the contours of a potential deal aren't that difficult to imagine, but at this point, no one is actually negotiating anything. They say potentially leaders could come up with a two-track plan that could raise the debt ceiling and set future budget caps to reduce spending over time. Messaging-wise, that could give everyone an opportunity to claim victory. Still, the source said that no one is ready to go there yet. The question is whether staff might be able to begin heading in that direction in the days ahead. The White House and Democrats continue to say that they want, again, a clean debt ceiling deal, and Republicans want to see spending cuts attached to that increase. With just a handful of days of members in session, no one is blinking yet. Okay, so inevitably, somebody's going to have to blink. Who's it going to be? Is Joe Biden, who we all know historically has been perfectly willing to negotiate on many different spending items, especially when it comes to pushing austerity on working class people? Is he going to blink? Is he going to fold and give in to some of these Republican demands? Or is Kevin McCarthy, maybe behind the scenes, he's getting some calls from some of his, Wall Street friends who are saying, we don't really want to blow up the entire global economy in order to get some of these things. Maybe he'll be feeling some outside pressure and he'll be the one who blinks. It's still definitely a jump ball right now. It's up in the air. But they continue here. So what are some of the GOP requirements? They say In February, when McCarthy and Biden first met, and before House Republicans crafted and passed their own bill to rein in spending and raise the debt ceiling, the terms of this negotiation might have just been focused on a caps deal accompanied by a debt ceiling hike. So just like general spending cuts, but they say McCarthy had more flexibility back then. But now, GOP sources tell CNN that the House Republicans are far more invested in some other provisions that were part of their bill, including number one, work requirements, or requiring more low-income Americans to work in order to receive government benefits, particularly food stamps and Medicaid. Okay, so let me make some explicitly clear here. Okay, this isn't even necessarily about saving the government a bunch of money or lowering the national debt and the deficit. Again, if you wanted to do that, the first things that you would go after would be the Pentagon budget. Or another way, instead of doing spending cuts, that you could reduce the debt and the deficit is by doing what? Would be by raising taxes, probably on the richest billionaires and the richest multi-billion-dollar corporations in the country. Those would be like the first two things that you would do if you were serious about tackling that as an issue. Instead of doing that, because they don't want to touch their wealthy friends, right? They are deciding to go and push further austerity measures on people who are on the bottom rung of the ladder within this country, okay? That's what they're choosing to do. They also want to add permitting reform for energy projects, so doubling down on fossil fuel usage is what that means. They also want to return unspent COVID-19 response funds to federal coffers. Okay, I mean, that's not the biggest deal in the world. They say repealing some of the green energy tax credits that were part of the Inflation Reduction Act. Okay, so they want to repeal some of the measly crumbs that, first of all, working class Americans get through programs like, food stamps and Medicaid, but also some of the measly crumbs that went towards addressing the single largest issue facing humanity, facing the United States, which is climate change. They want to repeal those green energy tax credits. I mean, keep in mind, we give, especially around the world, if you total the amount that the global community is giving in subsidies and tax breaks to the fossil fuel industry, it is an ungodly amount of money, okay? We are talking about hundreds of billions of dollars on an annual basis that the fossil fuel industry is being subsidized with, okay, as they continue to price gouge us and rip us off on the back end while they continue to destroy the planet and make it uninhabitable for future generations, right? So it's not as if like, oh, we're just trying to level the playing field here. No, you already are subsidizing the fossil fuel industry. You just don't want to give them any competition in that field, okay? So this is what the Republican priorities are. Now, again, Biden has a couple different methods that he could use to push back against this, to respond to this. He could, try to just, I guess, wait until the last second, which we're already pretty much there at this point. We're talking about like a 2-week or so deadline that we're running up against right now, and just hope that Republicans fold. There have been some other things that have been floated, including the 14th Amendment, that Biden could basically say that the national debt and is the national debt ceiling is unconstitutional, which honestly makes a lot of sense. If you read the 14th Amendment, they say that basically it is unconstitutional for the United States to default on some of the debt that we have already incurred, because this is money we have already spent. So this is something he could potentially look into. Is it unconstitutional to even have a debt ceiling? I would say, yeah, it's probably unconstitutional, but even beyond just being unconstitutional, it's also just made up. I mean, it's at the end of the day, right? And, I highly recommend people go read this book on modern monetary theory by Stephanie Kelton, okay, The Deficit Myth. It'll explain it in a lot more simple terms and more in-depth in a way that I can do right here in just a couple-minute video. But essentially, the national debt and the deficit, it's not some magic number where if we hit this point, every American is going to have to pull out their wallet, open it up, and pay some money, to China or whoever else owns our national debt. That's not how any of this works, okay? The national debt and the deficit, the debt ceiling especially, is just a made-up cap. Again, we raise it every single year, okay? Every couple of years, we raise the national debt ceiling, okay? We do it under Republicans. We do it under Democrats. It's just, what are you actually, using this for? Where are you spending your money, right? So we do this on a regular basis. It's not some magic number where we're just going to, bankrupt the American people. Why? Because the federal government, the way that the federal government spending works is not the same as how household spending works, right? It's not even the same as how state and local government spending works either, because the federal government is the producer. They have a monopoly on the production and the distribution of the US currency. The federal government can't run out of money, okay? It's impossible. So the real conversation that we should be having, right? Because I don't disagree with like reining in spending in some portions of the government. Again, the Pentagon budget, the lack of taxes on billionaires and corporations and all of that stuff, right? There's definitely areas where we could have room there to cut some of our budgets, right? But the real question here at the end of the day, the focus should be, what are we spending our money on? Are we spending money in ways that is going to be a productive investment for the future? Are we investing in materially improving the lives of average working class people through programs like Medicare for All, a Green New Deal, which by the way is predominantly a jobs program first and foremost, would also expand and improve the infrastructure within the United States? Are we actually making investments and spending our money in ways that are going to grow the economy over time and lift people up from the bottom in ways that will economically improve all of our realities? Okay, that's the core question when it comes to government spending. It shouldn't be about what's the debt ceiling cap at right now or what's the deficit. Okay, it's about what are you spending your money on, and that is a kind of conversation that Republicans don't want to have, which is why they continuously just make this out to be that, Joe Biden passed some radical socialist spending bill and, that's going to lead to bankrupting your children down the road. It's not true. It's a complete lie. It's an arbitrary cap. It's likely unconstitutional. So most of this conversation is just complete nonsense at the end of the day. And so, we'll have to see what happens here. We're obviously, again, heading towards that deadline on June 1st. So it'll be very interesting to see how this plays out. Hopefully the global economy doesn't just implode because some Republicans wanted to impose work requirements on working class people on the bottom rung of the ladder, but we'll keep you guys updated as we get more information on that. So with that being said, that's the show for today, I guess, right? Obviously I'm filling in for Kyle over the next couple of days. So it's been good to talk with you guys. Hopefully you guys have been somewhat enjoying the content that I've been putting out. If you want to, obviously go subscribe to my channel. The links will be in the description and all of that good stuff. Obviously continue subscribing to Kyle's channel as well. He just passed 1 million subs. He's up, on his way on the trajectory to 10 million, 50 million, 100 million subscribers. We're going to get him there. Go support Crystal, Kyle, and friends and all of that good stuff. But with that being said, I'm out.
Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You want to.